Hi, this is A.T. Documentation for this video comes primarily from Christopher J. LaForce's tome, The Choynski Chronicles. Now, that book provides an in-depth study of not only a great heavyweight fighter, Choynski, but the times in which he lived. Info comes also from Ron Jackson Jr.'s Fight to the Finish, the Barge Battle of 1889, and info comes from newspapers of the day and the Jewish Museum of the American West. Now, E.T. has some problem with that museum. After providing an excellent, albeit brief, summation of Isidore and Harriet Choynski, both deserving their own biographies, the museum lists their son Joe Choynski with these words, and I'm quoting, "Joseph became a heavyweight boxer," unquote. Period. Now, they don't mention his fighting the best of his day. Future or past heavyweight champions, Jim Jeffries, I think Choynski won that fight. Jack Johnson, he knocked him out. Marvin Hart, he fought James J. Corbett twice. Well, whatever. It's Choynski's fights with Corbett that will be discussed here, not the two professional bouts of 1889. Those drew worldwide attention, plus the wrath of California law authorities. But rather, we're going to talk about two encounters that Corbett and Joe had years earlier. Their first meeting occurred in 1884, when Joe Choynski was about 16 and Corbett about 18. It takes place inside the stable below the Corbett residence. And here's the story. Both boys have brothers who work at the city hall, and they've been arguing which is the best fighter, Jim or Joe. Now, Jim and Joe represent different but nearly adjacent San Francisco neighborhoods. One is Irish, the Corbetts, the other Jewish, the Choynskis. According to Corbett later, an argument began during, of all things, a game of marbles involving the Choynskis and Corbett's brothers. So later at supper, Corbett's brother says, "Jim, there's a boy named Choynski coming over here to box with you, and I want you to box better than you ever have before in your life." Well, Corbett was confused, but he said, "All right, Frank, I'll show the best I've got." Choynski did show up with the brothers, and he impressed Corbett, who described him as beautifully built and intelligent. Corbett's brother had told Jim that Joe was the best in the neighborhood, and his family says he's better than you. Well, the group files into the livery stable, push back the buggies, the horses have no idea what's going on, and formed a small square as a ring. The crowd sat on the buggy seats. The place is not well lit, according to Corbett, just a few gas lights on the wall. Well, the boys entered the square. Someone taps a dishpan. The fight begins. And it was, says Corbett, toe-to-toe mayhem. When the pan was hit after 3 minutes, they are wearing gloves, but there's no referee. After the pan was tapped, both continue fighting. Jim said he didn't hear it. He doesn't know about Joe. After 7 minutes, the older Corbett plants a right to Choynski's jaw. Then he follows up with a flurry of punches, and the result was, well, Joe was finished. But the Choynskis did not accept defeat. As they leave the stable, Frank, Jim's brother, shouts to Joe's brother, "Hey, Herbert, do you think my brother is champion now?" Herbert yells back, "No, your kid's good, all right, but Joe can beat him." Choynski, in the 30s, remembers things this way. He gets an invite to meet at Corbett's livery stable to fight. Joe knew Corbett had more experience than he did. Corbett trained at the San Francisco Olympic Club, very exclusive, and he sparred with top boxers around the world who came to visit. Now, Joe says his brother Maurice was with him, and once punches were traded, he knew, as he put it, Corbett had stumped me as far as science goes. His speed dazzled me. He danced like an apparition, gave me a boxing lesson for 2 rounds. He shook hands with Jim, but, says Joe Choynski, I knew there was going to be bad blood between us. Sometime later, probably a few weeks, there's another encounter. It takes place between Jim and Joe at a locale called the Dog Pound. Again, a result of quarrel between the brothers as to who was the best fighter. But before this fight, Corbett's father was very concerned that any story of Jim's extracurricular fighting might get to the bank and he's going to lose his job as a clerk. So at his father's urging, according to Jim Corbett, he promised his father he's not going to fight, and he walks to the Choynski house, intending to call the fight off. But before he can say anything, Joe's brother, I think this one was Chauncey, riled Corbett to the point that the fight's back on, and shortly, according to Jim, the five of us walked 3 or 4 miles to the sandhills beyond town. And the boys go at it again. Bare knuckles this time, no referee. Corbett, according to Joe Choynski later, was, again, lightning fast, had feet like a tap dancer. Then, says Joe, Jim, slammed a punch into Jim's temple, and Jim dropped. And then time was called. And at that time, a Choynski pal, I think his name was Nichols, yells out for them to run for fear of Corbett's gang. Corbett jumps up after being knocked down and punches not Joe, but Joe's brother Maurice. Corbett would say later that was a payment for Maurice's making him break his promise to his father. Corbett also maintained that he got the best of the encounter. One more thing. A man with a baby was close enough to witness this second encounter, about whom Jim Corbett would write later, and I'm quoting Corbett. And there this man sat, enjoying this free entertainment, little realizing, I suppose, that of those 2 slugging kids, one was later to be a near champion, the other champion heavyweight of the world, unquote. Oh, I almost forgot. Young Corbett tried to keep his father from knowing about the second fight, but Jim's pals had to blurt out everything and said that he'd beaten not just Joe Choynski, but his brother too. Now, Jim's father, who was so worried about Jim Corbett losing his clerk's job, was said to have replied, "What? Not only Joe, but that big fellow Maurice? You licked the 2 Choynski boys? Out of hell with the bank." Now look, you can read online all about the 2 famous Corbett-Choynski bouts in 1889, but very little exists out there regarding these early fights. So to get the comprehensive understanding of these 2 earlier bouts, way beyond what E.T. had, pick up those above-mentioned books. Jackson Jr.'s Fight to the Finish and Chris LePage's The Choynski Chronicles. And that's it. Comment below, tap the like icon, share the videos. Thank you.